Imagine paying less for an entire month of unlimited movies than most theaters charge for a single ticket. That is not a thought experiment. In 2017, MoviePass actually did it. $9.95 a month. One movie a day, any theater that took the card. Subscribers signed up by the millions, almost overnight, because on paper it looked like the deal of the decade. It was. That was the problem. Here is the part that got lost in all the headlines about disruption and growth. MoviePass was not negotiating discounted tickets with theaters. It was paying full price every single time a member swiped that card at the box office. So every time a subscriber walked in to see a movie, MoviePass wrote a check to the theater for whatever that ticket normally cost, while collecting a flat monthly fee that, in many markets, a single ticket alone would have equaled or beaten. The company was not selling movies at a discount. It was buying movies at retail and reselling access to them for a fraction of the cost, and eating the difference every time. To understand why that structure is so dangerous, it helps to think about it the way an insurer would. Insurance works because the company can spread risk across a huge pool of people, most of whom file no claims at all, and price the policy so the rare, expensive claims get covered by everyone else's premiums. The entire model collapses the moment the pool skews toward the people most likely to file the biggest claims, a problem economists call adverse selection. The offer disproportionately attracts exactly the people who will cost the most to serve. MoviePass built something closer to an insurance company that advertised itself directly to the people most likely to file a claim every single day, then acted surprised when they showed up and filed one. Executives at the time framed this as a deliberate bet, not a mistake. The story was that MoviePass would use the flood of subscriber data and the built-in advertising audience to eventually make the real money, the same way a company might sell a product at a loss to build a customer base it monetizes later. That is not a crazy strategy in theory. Plenty of businesses subsidize an entry product to capture a much larger downstream revenue stream. The problem is that strategy only works if the subsidized losses stay bounded while the future revenue engine gets built. MoviePass's losses were not bounded. They scaled directly with usage. And usage was exactly the thing the company was trying to grow as fast as possible. This is where the math turns vicious, and it is worth slowing down on, because the mechanism here is the whole lesson. Not every subscriber used MoviePass the same amount. Some people signed up, used it twice, and mostly forgot about it. Those casual users were basically fine for the business. Their fee mostly covered whatever few tickets they redeemed, or came close. But a meaningful slice of subscribers used the service exactly as advertised. One movie a day, every day it was available to them. For those power users, the math was brutal for MoviePass. A single one of those subscribers could burn through their entire month's subscription fee in a single weekend, and then keep going, ticket after ticket, for 3 more weeks, all at MoviePass's expense. This is the part managers tend to miss when they look at a subscription or usage-based business from the outside. Averages hide the story. If you only looked at the average subscriber, MoviePass might have looked survivable, maybe even close to break-even in aggregate. But a business is not run by its average customer. It is run, and often broken, by its most extreme one. The heavy users were not an edge case MoviePass could shrug off as a rounding error. They were the exact group the whole unlimited pitch was designed to attract, and they were the group draining the company fastest. The very customers who loved the product the most, who told their friends, who generated the best word of mouth and the most usage data, were also the ones losing MoviePass the most money per person. Growth and disaster were coming from the same place. Think about what that actually means structurally. In most healthy subscription businesses, your most engaged, most loyal customers are your most profitable ones. They renew longer, they refer others, their lifetime value is the highest in the customer base. MoviePass inverted that relationship completely. Loyalty and engagement, the two things every subscription company prays for, were the leading indicators of loss, not profit. That is about as close to an anti-business model as you can accidentally build while still calling it growth. This pattern shows up anywhere a business sells unlimited access to something that costs real money per use, and it is worth naming so you can spot it before it wrecks a plan you are about to launch. An all-you-can-eat buffet only works if the average diner eats a moderate amount, because the restaurant is quietly betting that light eaters subsidize the occasional heavy one. An open bar at a flat cover charge only works within a bounded window of hours, because past that window the math flips against the host. Even a familiar phrase like an unlimited data plan usually comes with an asterisk somewhere in the terms, because the provider learned the same lesson MoviePass never fixed in time. Once you remove the connection between how much something is used and how much it costs the user, you have to control usage some other way, through hard caps, through time limits, through service quality that quietly degrades at the top end, or you eventually control it through bankruptcy. Economists sometimes call this general failure mode moral hazard, the tendency for people to consume more of something once the cost of that consumption is no longer visibly tied to them personally. MoviePass did not invent this trap. It just walked into it faster and more publicly than almost anyone before it, because movie tickets are expensive enough and daily use is achievable enough that the gap between price and cost could blow up in months instead of years. MoviePass clearly understood, at some level, that its power users were the core problem, because look at what it actually did in response. It rolled out surge pricing on popular new releases, so members paid extra for the movies they most wanted to see, quietly reversing the unlimited promise for exactly the titles that would have driven the most redemptions. It added blackout dates, cutting off big opening weekends when demand and cost would have spiked hardest. And most tellingly, users started reporting random login failures and app glitches that just happened to make it harder to actually use the pass on a given night. None of these were officially framed as rationing tools, but functionally, that is exactly what they were. Friction engineered to slow down the heaviest users without admitting that heavy usage was the thing killing the company. Here is the honest way to think about that response. It treated the symptom, not the disease. Surge pricing and blackout dates and glitchy logins might shave a percentage of losses off the edges, but none of it fixed the underlying arithmetic. Every ticket redeemed still cost MoviePass close to full retail price, and the monthly fee still did not come close to covering that cost for anyone using the product as intended. You cannot friction your way out of a broken unit economics problem. You can only slow down how fast you hit the wall. It is the same as trying to fix a boat taking on water by bailing faster instead of patching the hole. You might buy yourself extra time, and time is not nothing, but everyone on board is still working off the assumption that eventually someone finds the hole and seals it. MoviePass kept bailing for years without ever changing the one number that mattered, the gap between what a heavy user's subscription brought in and what that same user's tickets cost the company. And the wall arrived fast. Cash burn reportedly reached tens of millions of dollars a month, an extraordinary rate for a company whose entire pitch was built on selling a $9.95 product. By 2019, the strain had become impossible to hide. The app started shutting off access mid-month for some users once cost controls kicked in, which is about as clear an admission as a company can make without saying it out loud. We cannot afford to let people use the thing we sold them. In 2020, MoviePass shut down completely. Now here is the part that most people telling this story stop short of, and it is the part that actually matters if you manage anything with a subscription, a flat fee, a buffet, an all-you-can-use plan, or honestly any offer where cost scales with usage but price does not. The lesson is not simply price low and grow fast is dangerous. Cheap pricing paired with fast growth built plenty of massive companies. The real lesson is narrower and sharper. Before you scale any offer, you have to know whether your heaviest possible user makes you money or costs you money, because that person is not a hypothetical. They are coming, and once your offer is public, you cannot stop them from finding you. It is worth pausing on why this particular failure mode is so counterintuitive for managers coming from other kinds of businesses, because most of what you learn about growth actually points the opposite direction. In a typical gym membership, the business quietly prefers members who barely show up, since the facility gets paid the same fee whether someone trains 5 days a week or never comes in after January. In most software subscriptions, a customer who logs in constantly costs the company almost nothing extra in marginal terms, because the marginal cost of one more login on a server is close to zero, so heavy engagement is close to pure profit and a strong signal the customer will renew. Managers absorb these patterns early in their careers, often without ever stating them out loud, and they start to treat engagement and profitability as roughly the same thing, because in most of the businesses they have seen up close, they are. MoviePass sat in the rare category where that intuition flips completely, because the product being resold was not server capacity or idle gym equipment, it was a physical seat in a theater that cost the company real, non-shrinking money every time it was filled. The instinct that usually protects a manager, more engagement is good, more usage is good, becomes the exact instinct that will bankrupt you if you do not stop and check which kind of business you are actually running. This is where I'd push back slightly on how this story usually gets told, as pure hubris or bad math from people who should have known better. I think what actually happened is more common and more dangerous than that. The team was almost certainly looking at real usage data early on and reading it optimistically, the way growing companies often do, because the top-line signal, millions of sign-ups, was so loud it drowned out a much quieter signal buried in the same data that the fastest-growing segment of users was also the most expensive one. That is a subtler failure than not doing the math. It is doing the math on the wrong slice of the population and mistaking enthusiasm for sustainability. Apply this to your own team for a second. If you run a pilot program, a free trial, an unlimited tier, a flat-rate service package, anything where a customer pays one number and consumes a variable amount, do not just model your average customer's economics. Model your most enthusiastic, most engaged, most heavy-using possible customer. Ask what happens to your margin if that person is not the exception but becomes the norm, because in any offer generous enough to attract attention, it eventually will. If that single heavy user alone breaks your unit economics, you do not have a pricing problem you can tune your way around later. You have a structural flaw that more customers will only replicate at scale, faster. In practice, this is a short exercise, not a research project, and the fact that it is short is exactly why skipping it is so hard to forgive. Pull whatever usage data you already have, even from a tiny pilot group, and rank customers by consumption instead of averaging them together. Find the single heaviest user in that group and calculate their individual economics in isolation, what they paid you against what serving them actually cost. Then ask a harder question. Is that person a freak outlier who will never reappear, or is that person a preview of who your offer is designed to attract once marketing actually works and word of mouth kicks in? MoviePass's power users were not outliers hiding in the data. They were the target customer, doing exactly what the pitch told them they could do. The company just never ran their numbers on their own before betting the whole business on millions of people behaving the same way. That is really the core mechanism worth remembering here. Scale does not fix bad unit economics. It amplifies them, in either direction. A pilot that loses a small amount of money across 10 customers looks like a rounding error, easy to explain away as an investment in growth. Run that same pricing and that same usage pattern across 10,000 customers, and the same proportional loss becomes an existential cash crisis, arriving faster than most finance teams can react to it, because usage-driven losses compound with adoption instead of trailing behind it. Growth was never the fix for MoviePass's math. Growth was the accelerant. There is also a timing trap hiding inside this that makes the whole thing worse, and it has to do with when the cash actually moves. The monthly fee comes in on day one, a small, predictable trickle. The theater bills, or in MoviePass's case, the near-instant reimbursement to theaters, go out continuously, all month long, every time a card gets swiped, and they do not care whether the subscriber has already used more than their fee covers 3 times over. That mismatch means a company in this position can look flush with cash at the start of every billing cycle and be quietly hemorrhaging it by the middle of the same cycle, which makes the problem incredibly easy to miss on a monthly cash snapshot and incredibly easy to notice too late once the burn rate has already compounded across a growing subscriber base for months. By the time a finance team sees the real trend line, the company has usually already signed up the next 100,000 people who will make next month's version of the same problem bigger, not smaller. So before you chase a big growth number on any offer with variable cost behind it, do the smaller, less exciting work first. Check the economics at 10 customers, not 10,000. Find your heaviest hypothetical user and run their numbers specifically, not blended into an average. Ask honestly whether the story you are telling leadership about future monetization, future ad revenue, future upsell, future anything is a real plan with a real timeline or a way of avoiding an uncomfortable answer sitting in the data right now. Because MoviePass proved something every manager eventually learns the hard way if they skip this step, a growth chart that looks incredible on a slide can be covering for a business model that loses more money with every single new sign-up. And by the time that becomes obvious on the chart itself, it is usually already too late to fix. And if traps like this help you pressure test your own numbers before you scale, go ahead and subscribe. Another breakdown lands next week.